The sound of 100 voices cheering to the bride and groom should have been the happiest sound of my life. Instead, it was the soundtrack to my slow-motion nightmare. Because 2 minutes earlier, I had watched my new mother-in-law, a woman named Beatrice Sterling, commit a perfect silent act of war. As the crowd had begun to stir for the toast, I saw her elegant, manicured hand, the one adorned with a diamond ring her first husband bought her, drift over the delicate crystal flute meant for me. Her fingers, poised like a spider, had twitched. A small white tablet had slipped from her grasp, fizzing into a tiny, angry storm within my golden champagne. My name is Chloe. I'm 27 years old, and until that moment, my wedding day had been perfect. The grand ballroom of the Willow Creek Hotel in Chicago was bathed in the soft glow of 1,000 fairy lights, reflecting off the deep blue table linens I'd spent months selecting. My husband, Alexander, was across the room, his head thrown back in a laugh, completely unaware that his mother had just turned our reception into a battlefield. And I was left on the front line, unarmed except for my wits. Beatrice had never thought I was enough for her son. Where Alexander was old money, Chicago legacy, and Ivy League, I was a public school art teacher whose parents were wonderful, loving people who worked in a library and a hardware store. To Beatrice, I was a social climber, a blot on the Sterling family escutcheon. She had spent the 2 years of our relationship conducting a subtle, relentless campaign of disapproval, backhanded compliments about my career, helpful suggestions about my wardrobe, and the constant, ghostly presence of Alexander's ex, Eleanor, who was always conveniently invited to family functions, her trust fund and pedigree on full display. But we had persevered. We had loved each other through her quiet sabotage, and today we had stood before our friends and family and sworn our lives to one another. I thought the battle was over. I was wrong. The real attack had just begun. As the best man, Alex's brother, Mark, stood up and tapped his microphone, the reality of my situation crashed over me. I was holding a poisoned glass. The proof was dissolving before my eyes. If I called her out, I would be the hysterical, paranoid bride causing a scene. She would deny it with such wounded dignity that I would be the villain forever. But I would not drink from that glass. My eyes darted to Beatrice. She was looking away, offering a regal, practiced smile to an aunt at the next table. This was my only chance. With a speed I didn't know I possessed, born of pure adrenaline, I switched our glasses. Her untouched, pristine flute was now in front of me. The one containing her little secret was placed directly before her empty seat. My hands were trembling so violently I had to clutch the tablecloth to steady them. Mark began his speech. He talked about childhood pranks and college escapades. The room laughed. I felt like I was watching a play from 1,000,000 miles away. Beatrice turned back, her eyes flicking to the glass, then to me. Did she suspect? Her face was a mask of serene maternal pride. She picked up the flute, her fingers curling around the stem exactly where mine had been moments before. To Chloe and Alexander, Mark concluded, raising his glass. To Chloe and Alexander, the room echoed. I lifted my glass to my lips, pretending to sip, the bubbles tickling my nose. My eyes were locked on Beatrice. She took a long, deliberate swallow, draining nearly half the contents. She set the glass down, a small, satisfied smile playing on her lips as she looked at me. It was a smile that said, "Just you wait." The first 20 minutes were agonizingly normal. She made polite conversation, complimented the filet mignon, and asked me if I'd remembered to write a thank you note to the bishop who had married us. I gave tight, one-word answers, my entire body a tightly coiled spring. Had I imagined it? Was it just a speck of dust, a fragment of a stray aspirin? The doubt was a creeping vine, threatening to strangle my certainty. Then it started. It began with a slow, languorous blink, then another. Beatrice, who was always ramrod straight, seemed to slump slightly in her chair. A soft, unfocused sigh escaped her lips. Then she giggled. It was a high, girlish sound I had never heard from her, a sound entirely devoid of her usual calculated coolness. "Alexander, my beautiful boy," she slurred, reaching out to pat his arm with a clumsiness that was utterly alien to her. "Have I told you how perfectly perfect your wife is?" She turned her glassy gaze to me. "Chloe, darling, you are just a vision, a pure vision." Alexander looked from his mother to me, his brow furrowed in confusion. "Mom, are you feeling all right?" "Feeling?" she echoed, her voice dreamy. "I'm feeling magnificent, like dancing." Before anyone could stop her, she pushed back her chair, stumbling slightly. She kicked off her designer heels, one flying under the table. "This music is so dull," she announced to no one in particular. "We need something with soul." And then Beatrice Sterling, the matriarch, the pillar of Chicago society, began to dance. It wasn't a graceful sway. It was a loose-limbed, uncoordinated shuffle. She waved her arms above her head, her carefully styled chignon coming undone, as the string quartet played a delicate waltz. The guests fell silent. Forks hovered mid-air. A few people chuckled nervously, thinking it was a bizarre, drunken joke. But Alexander and I knew this was no act. It escalated quickly. She tried to grab the microphone from a horrified Mark, mumbling a toast about true love that devolved into a story about Alexander's potty training. Then she wove through the tables, hugging stunned relatives and complimenting strangers on their sparkling auras. She found a centerpiece of white orchids, tucked one behind her ear, and declared herself the queen of the spring. But the pinnacle of her unraveling was yet to come. Her eyes landed on our wedding cake, a magnificent 5-tiered masterpiece of vanilla bean and raspberry. It was a work of art. With a determined, if unsteady gait, she marched toward it. "Mom, no!" Alexander cried, rushing forward. It was too late. She climbed onto the wedding table, her bare feet squelching into the bottom tier. The table groaned. Guests gasped. Someone screamed. Beatrice, now standing in my beautiful cake, raised her arms in triumph. "I am the queen!" Then she attempted a curtsy. The world seemed to freeze. The table legs buckled. With the sound of splintering wood and collapsing confectionery, Beatrice Sterling, queen of the spring, disappeared into a mountain of buttercream, fondant, and vanilla sponge. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by a faint, frosting-muffled moan. The rest of the night was a blur of paramedics, horrified whispers, and Alexander's ashen face. At the hospital, the diagnosis was clear: a massive, non-prescribed dose of a powerful benzodiazepine. When the doctor asked how it could have happened, I knew it was time. I looked at my husband, my heart aching for the pain I was about to cause him. "Alexander," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "Before the toast, I saw your mother put a pill in my champagne. I switched our glasses." The journey from that moment, through his denial, his anger, his devastating grief, and finally his unwavering support, is a story for another time. It involved a police report, a trial, and the very public fall of Beatrice Sterling. But as I stood there in that hospital, watching the truth dawn in my husband's eyes, I knew one thing for certain. I had gone to my wedding a hopeful bride. I had left a survivor. And sometimes, survival means making the poisoner drink from their own cup.